This is for you, my son. Today's the day you were supposed to graduate from high school. I wrote it for them. Instead, we're here in our living room. You may not have the big ceremony or that moment where you walk across the stage and hope they pronounce your name correctly. This cap is from my high school graduation. When I wore it, I was 18 and thought I was invincible. When I wore it, I was dating the most beautiful girl in school, my high school sweetheart. Now she's your mom. When I wore it, I had a full head of hair. When I wore it, I was afraid of nothing. It's hard to feel that today, especially with the death toll from COVID-19 now surpassing the number of Americans killed in the Vietnam War and plowing closer to the number of dead in World War I. As your father, I'm supposed to find a point of comparison in my own life and then use it to give you good advice, or at least as good advice as anyone can give in a graduation speech. But I have no point of comparison, no frame of reference, but I have history. And so I look back to the greatest tragedies where I could find, and still find, a survivor to talk to. The two that came to mind were 9/11 and the Holocaust, and yes, both had vastly different consequences than being in this nice living room. But it's still thematically relevant nonetheless. In fact, 9/11 seemed oddly appropriate since your generation are actually the first children after 9/11. Your mother was truly 8 months pregnant when it happened. On that day, we lost our neighbor and friend, Michelle Heidenberger, a flight attendant on the Pentagon flight. So this past week, I called Michelle's husband, Tom, and I asked him, how the hell did you get through a disaster like that? Tom's a macho guy. He's a pilot himself on the airlines. He saw 9/11 as a personal attack, and in his words, quote, "We won't let them alter our way of life. Get over it. Suck it up." Not exactly the advice that I would give, but the real truth was, Tom focused on his family. Quote, "I did it for my kids. I focused on my children." He also said his dog, his yellow lab Jameson, helped save him. We take a walk 4 times a day. And then over time, Tom went back to doing the thing he loved most, flying planes. He buried his wife, who was killed on one, and then got right back on one because, man, that's what made him feel alive. He told me, quote, "To live is to survive is to live." It's good advice. From there, I went further back in time, calling in some favors and finding myself on the phone with a man named Sal Dreyer, 95 years old, Holocaust survivor. Saul's family was wiped out. When the Nazis came to his town, he hid in a drugstore, watching them kill his grandmother in front of his eyes. They shot her because she was paralyzed and couldn't move. His father, mother, sister, all of them were sent to the crematorium. At 18, your age, he was in the Plaszow concentration camp, the one immortalized in Schindler's List. He lives here in Florida now. I asked him the same question: how'd you get through your lowest moment? And he said, which lowest moment? The Holocaust, when I got stomach cancer years later, or when I had 3 strokes just a few years ago? And I was like, let's start with the Holocaust. Know how he got through it? Quote, "I stayed alive because I had 2 spoons and played like drums. We didn't have much food, but we had music." Recently, he started the Holocaust Survivor Band, which, you guessed it, is a bunch of 90-year-olds playing music for people. Honestly, though, it made no sense. Music. 2 spoons clanging together, that's what saved you? "I'm a creator," he said, practically yelling with excitement and a bit of hearing loss. But for this graduation speech, I told him I need to give advice to my son. What should I tell him? "Never forget your family," he roared, more excited than ever. "Your mother, your father, your sister. Open your eyes. The world is open for young people." "But COVID-19, I said. He didn't hesitate. "Even now, we're going to beat it." I can't argue with that man. He made it through the Holocaust. But it did strike me that both he and Tom had the same things in common. In the face of great tragedy, you need to find what you love, be it music, or flying planes, or sports, or your work with Special Olympics. And then you focus on your family, the people you're with right now, which means, my son, everything you need, you have. I remember you taking your first steps, putting my arms out to catch you. You didn't need it. Or your first day of nursery school, where I looked through the window in the door to make sure you were okay, teaching you to ride a bike, waving as you left for camp, dropping you off for junior high, then high school, then to get your driver's license. And each time, the same as it is right now, the same as it will always be. Everything you need, you have. I know the current world isn't the ending you were dreaming of for your high school story. And it doesn't make up for all that was lost. Like Tom told me, when disaster strikes, quote, you always mourn the life you had. He's right. When my mom and dad died, your Nana and Pop, I spent so long trying to get over it. But I finally realized I will never get over it. They deserve to be mourned. In the face of great loss or any seismic turmoil, the only thing you can do is transform into something new. A somewhat stronger, somewhat weaker, but somehow more powerful and independent version of yourself. Commencement isn't an ending. Look it up. It means beginning, a new start. Which brings me back to this cap and today's day of celebration. When I wore it, I was 18 at my own high school graduation. When I wore it, I was scared and cocky and terrified and excited. When I wore it, I didn't care what anyone thought about me, unless it hurt. When I wore it, I was excited to go to the University of Michigan, where you're supposed to go in just a few months. When I wore it, I firmly believed that anything was possible. And I hope, my son, you do too. Save your cap. Show it to someone you love one day. Tell them your story. Whatever it is, I know it will be spectacular. I love you, Jonas.
Awesome.